Are you looking for a space where you will learn to improve your mental strength, emotional health, and heal your insecurities from the inside out? Take the first step to living a more meaningful life with the Better Me with Body by Bree podcast. I'm your host, Bree. I'm a certified personal trainer, entrepreneur, and mother of 3. I've helped empower thousands of women to take action through fitness, nutrition, meditation, personal development, and aligning thoughts with action. This podcast is for those who are ready to feel inspired and motivated to live a more purposeful life. Let's grow together. A few years ago, Adam and I started doing a yearly planning session to help get our finances in order, strengthen our relationship, help our relationship with our children, our spirituality, and it has been such a game changer. I decided to bring Adam onto the podcast, and we're going to walk you through how we do our annual planning session and how it's completely changed our life. Welcome to the podcast. Guess who's here with me? My favorite person in the whole world, Adam.
I hope so.
So Adam is...
This is my third appearance.
I know, you're getting famous.
I'm starting to feel comfortable on these podcasts.
Well, you know what? Whenever you're on, it's actually the highest rated. So people like you. Apparently you have some wisdom to share, which you do because he's amazing. So
I got some dimes today that I've been really, excited to share.
Oh, yeah. So today we're talking all about the one technique that we use to really make our marriage more fulfilled, our life, reach our goals, feel more connected to each other. It's really been a huge game changer in our marriage, and it is our yearly planning session. So we each year will sit down and we'll plan out what we want our lives to look like that year. And it's not just setting goals. This is very different than just setting goals. Most of the time, goals don't really stick. So Adam, let's start telling them, well, actually, let's paint a picture of what our life looked like before we did this.
Disaster. It was...
I wouldn't say disaster, but...
Hanging on to a thread.
It's just not our marriage, just life. You know how it gets when you have like small kids and you both have businesses you're trying to build and run, and things can slip through the cracks pretty quickly. Like we just realized we weren't checking in with each other as regularly as we wanted. We didn't feel as connected to each other because we both were so invested in kind of like what we were doing day in and day out. And so things kind of just started to slip. And so we wanted to nip it in the bud and really get down to what makes us feel fulfilled. And you have to set systems and have goals for those things that make you feel fulfilled. And so that's where our yearly planning sessions came into play. And it's been a really big game changer.
I think it was like more born of necessity.
Yes.
Where I just think we weren't fulfilled. And so then it was like, hey, we got to do something, because if this is what life's going to be like in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I mean, we only have more balls to juggle. And so I think it was just like, hey, let's go out and find a solution and not be, I think really the thing that Bree obviously does really well, or that we both do well, is we just don't like to settle for the status quo of just like, okay, this is our life and we are a victim of it and we can't control or change some of the things in our lives.
Yeah, we do. We're always like, no, we can change this. We don't need to live in chaos. We don't need to live. We always say like, are we being proactive or reactive? And that time in our life, we were being reactive because we didn't have a plan. And now we're being proactive, and it feels like you take your power back and your control back. So
yeah, I think there's like 2 states that you can live in, and you can really only live in one or the other at the time. And yeah, like anxiousness and stress, those are typically states of being reactive. And then proactive, those are states of intention, purpose driven, control, right? I mean, obviously we can't always live in a state that we can control, but at the same time, if I would like to choose which one I would prefer to stay in longer, then that's up to me to be more intentional and purposeful in my life.
Yes. And what we really wanted to work on were our finances. We wanted to have a plan. We kind of didn't even really have a plan for our finances. We wanted to work on our connection with each other and our relationship with each other and also with our children. And then we also wanted to work on our businesses and how to set up boundaries with our businesses so it didn't take over our life. And then also our fun, like our vacations
And physical.
and oh yes, physical and spiritual. So we had a lot that we wanted to kind of get in order. So let's kind of talk about the purpose behind why we do this annual planning session.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think a lot of what we just said is just to have a more fulfilled life. And at the end of the day, we just look at, okay, well, what would be some of the things that would move the needle the most if we were to say, okay, hey, I want to work on this. Well, would that actually improve my life the most? And I think that's where we had to decide as, okay, if you have all of these things, spiritual, physical, business, I mean, it's overwhelming to try and change all of them all at once. And so I think we just identified, okay, we have some intentions of things we want to work on, but like, what's the one thing for each of these categories, and put our focus on the one thing that would really move the needle in terms of fulfillment in each of those categories. Because that's the problem, right? Is if you're just going to identify all the things you need to do, then you're just going to get swamped.
Yeah. So, how did we go about doing that? Like, instead of just setting a goal, we always talk about Tony Robbins. Well, Adam loves Tony Robbins. I do too. But he talks about this RPM.
Yeah. So, and I would recommend everybody should go through his, it's the, shoot, I'm trying to remember the name of the thing. I'll remember in a second, but it's basically his time management course. It's called Time of Your Life, actually. And so I went through that, and he goes through a really good strategy where it's called RPM. So it stands for Results, Purpose, and then Massive Action Plan. And so really, it's the idea of setting these goals is, I mean, there's a reason why 98% of people don't make it past their New Year's resolutions, past like January. I mean, it's a huge fall off. And I think the idea of it is, hey, a goal is a destination. That's where you want to go. But a system is the vehicle that gets you there. And I think most people just don't actually have good systems and processes. They just have some idea of what they want, or you would say the result. And even then they're kind of vague on, okay, well, what's the really the result and the purpose of it? And so that's kind of where part of the planning that we get into with Tony is, it starts with, okay, the result, which, I mean, we can talk about.
Yeah, let's use like an actual example. So like, let's use our relationship. We wanted to be able to communicate better in our relationship and have a really strong relationship.
Yeah, we wanted to be fulfilled, happy. And to me, when we sat down, so the next phase would be like, the purpose of that for me really was actually to show our children a little more like what a marriage should look like. Because I think for me, especially, it's like, hey, our children are watching all the time. And if we are arguing, or if our tone isn't really great, what we started to see was that they were using some of the same, they would be raising their voices, or they would be watching if we were right, not speaking kindly to each other. So to me, that was the purpose of, hey, I want to be more fulfilled in our marriage, but I want to be able to communicate and have a much more meaningful relationship that would affect our children and just our overall household.
So you have to have a strong purpose behind why you're doing it. That's the driver.
That's 100% right. Because most people, like, they set a goal of, okay, this would be cool, but their why or their purpose isn't really strong. And so
or they don't know what it is.
And they don't know what it is. And so I can, when things are maybe starting to slide or whatever, it's like, I can remember I'm doing this for my kids and for my wife, which is a really big why for me. And so the likelihood of me accomplishing this particular result is much higher than if if it was just about me.
Right. Well, and two, we went back and we were like, what makes us the happiest in our life? And how much time are we spending on those things? And we went back to it and we were like, each other. Our relationship makes us the most happy, and our children. And so what are we doing to strengthen those relationships? And so just kind of taking it back to what really matters in your life and what you value the most. And that's what we brought it down to. So
Mm-hmm.
our goal was to communicate better and have a really strong relationship. So what was our system?
Yeah. And that's so results, purpose, and then Tony calls it the massive action plan, which would be really your system. And I said this in your previous podcast before. James Clear, he writes Atomic Habits really good, but my favorite line is he says, um, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so, which is like, man, that has played out so true in my life. And so then that's kind of what Tony's saying. Okay, well, what's your plan and what's your system? And so then we said, okay, some key fundamentals of a plan that makes sure that it gets done. For us, we realized is accountability that is somewhat consistent. And without that, like the system falls entirely apart. So we identified, okay, we have to have a weekly check-in, hell or high water, no matter what. And
so it's the same time every week, Sunday nights around 8 o'clock. So we know that's our check-in. We put it in our calendar.
yeah, and without that check-in, because there was times where we'd set the goals and then we wouldn't do the check-in, but without a pretty regular periodic check-in where both of you are bought in, it never happens. And so that's to me the key piece of it is either an accountability partner or an accountability system. But that's without it, really nothing is happening. And so yeah, once you have that's the kind of keystone, then now you pull it back, and maybe you can talk about this.
What part?
Just basically you
Oh,
pull
like what we did?
yeah.
Yeah, so we set our system. We said, okay, we want a weekly check-in. In this check-in, we'll go over our finances for that week, how we did with each other that week, how we spoke to the children, because we're really trying to work on not yelling. We're very passionate in our house.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use the word passionate.
Passionate's a good word.
And and then we go over our schedule for the next week. Like, okay, what do you have in your calendar? What do I have on my calendar? And we just sync up, and we make sure that we feel organized and ready and prepared for the next week. So that was step one, was making sure that we have a weekly check-in at 8 o'clock. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 40, just whatever we need to go through. Then the next part is
let me interrupt too. Right now, I would say is learn how to leverage. So there are amazing software tools in terms of back to what I was saying is with accountability. So for example, finances, we use mint.com, which is amazing. It's really like systemized our finances. And then other habits, like for example, with, okay, hey, how do we track certain things? So like the app called Streaks is really good because it's like a habit tracker and you can share your habits with your partner. So like Bree, like I have like, for example, a no yell day.
I'm so proud of him.
And I'm on a 14-day streak of no yell day.
That's our biggest streak yet. 14 days of no yelling.
I know. And so it's shared. So every time I go in, I finish the day. Awesome. But again, it goes back to just like there's so many downsides to technology right now, but there's so many upsides. And unless you're really learning to use those platforms, I think you're missing out on some really effective tools. So I just wanted to give a quick plug on that.
And don't feel overwhelmed if that sounds overwhelming to you. Start where you can. But yes. So we set our weekly check-in, which was, okay, that's the accountability piece. Then we were like, okay, well, what makes us actually feel fulfilled in our marriage? And I know, because I'm an Enneagram 7, that I need fun. I need spontaneity. I need to feel like a kid again. I want to have fun. I want to do hobbies with Adam. I want his one-on-one time. And that's what makes me feel really connected to him. So we established, okay, Friday mornings is when we're going to do something fun together, whether it's hiking, golfing, going to the shooting range, maybe doing surf lessons. I don't know, like whatever we want to do, we're connecting on just a fun, spontaneous level, because that's how I feel fulfilled. And Adam, how he feels fulfilled is sex. I mean, he's a man, right? Like that. I'm like, what would you like to feel fulfilled? He's like, honey, I just need sex and I'm good. but it's true. And I feel like this kind of gets a bad rap. I think we actually have a podcast on, oh, we do, our sex therapist podcast, but it kind of gets a bad rap that like men need sex or, whatever. But it is how Adam feels connected to me. So if I want Adam to make a priority to connect with me and do fun, spontaneous things with me, then I want to make a priority for him if he feels connected to me through sex. That's important to him. And that's important that I feel connected to him. So we make time for that. We have a goal and we try to make time for it. And so it doesn't slip through the cracks or we don't get too busy. So we have that. And then we also have our weekly date nights. Every Saturday night, we have our babysitter come and we go to dinner or we do something fun with friends. And since we've implemented this, it's been probably 2 or 3 years now. I feel so connected to Adam. I feel like it's the best our marriage has ever been because we're putting each other as a priority.
Yeah. And the idea of it, back to the start, is you would say, okay, hey, and I would do those personality tests. Bree obviously has really gotten me into it since she's gotten everybody into it, but it's really good because
the Enneagram test is what he's talking about.
Yeah. So you would say, okay, based on what makes me fulfilled and based on what makes Bree fulfilled, you would kind of say, okay, here are my needs. And then you build it out. What does that look like on your Apple Calendar or your Google Calendar? So, and then you would just kind of visually say, okay, we're going to put those in first. And then you start working it backwards. Okay, we're going to add in time with kids, so one-on-one time. So I say, okay, I'm going to block an hour with Jameson this day. I'm going to take him golfing with me. I'm going to take Olivia to frozen yogurt. But you build those things out first into your calendar before you add anything else in there, and really that's the visual, and then it just helps moving forward. But that's the concept: is you're just very intentional with your time, and you do not under any circumstances deviate, because you deviate once, then you can deviate twice. And I wouldn't say, I'll take that back. It's not like, hey, don't deviate under any circumstances, but just don't make it slide to 2 weeks. Like, don't make it slide to 3 weeks. Like, do your best. Obviously, you're going to miss sometimes, but just don't let it slide, which is probably true of most any habit. It's like, you can miss one time, don't miss twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we just decided like those relationships are really important in our life. And so we want to have a plan of action for it. So some of the other things, like we said before, so we went through and we're like, okay, for finances, we're going to track our mint. We'll review that every Sunday night with our check-in. Our spirituality, we're going to do our spirituality. And we set systems for every single one. And then we went through our calendar together and mapped it out, what it looks like. And then we hold each other accountable. And then each year we can go back and see how we did with those systems and how it helped and kind of just reevaluate. And it's really fun. And then also if you can, it's fun to get away for a night and just be together and really focus on that and reconnect and kind of do a refresher for the whole year. So it's been a huge blessing for our marriage. And I'm like, we need to do a podcast. We need to share this with other people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer that if you set things up right, and I think John Wooden makes a really quote on like, hey, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, then you'll have to have time to do it right the second time. Or when you didn't do it right. So to me, it's like, hey, if you just set it up, it's a lot. What we're saying may seem like overwhelming amount of work, like just a lot of brain power to sit there and like create systems and think, like look at some software to help you and set up your mint. Like, it just seems like a lot of work, and it is on the front end. But I'm telling you, it will save you so much headache and heartache and relationship issues on the back end, that to me, it's, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure. And it's to me, like, I just, again, goes back to, we lived in that state for too long. That was reactive, not intentional. We were kind of victims of our circumstance. And that is a much worse situation than just having to put in a little bit of extra work on the front end.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I remember when we sat down and did like the beginning parts of this, I was like super resentful because we weren't connecting and I felt like it was all on me and we weren't partners because we didn't know, we weren't on the same page. And so I felt like I was living my life, he was living his life, and I just couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I just started resenting him, and he didn't even know because we weren't talking about it because we were so busy and I was raising small babies. And so just the fact that you're like getting together and talking about how you feel. And, that's when we got Avery, our nanny, and she's been helping us part-time. And our whole world has changed because we got together and communicated our needs and what we felt. So it can make a huge difference. And hopefully you take some of these tools and implement, even if you just want to implement one of them. Like you don't have to do it all right now. Pick what works for you. But I just want to challenge you to pick at least one of the things that you want to sit down with your spouse and really talk about how you're feeling, work out a system, figure out the purpose, and then make a plan.
It's pretty good.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
No. Get it done.
Get it done.
Yeah.
You got this. And we're not perfect. We've never been perfect. We don't ever want you to feel like we are. But when we have implemented this, it's been great. So, all right. Let me know your thoughts. If you like this, give us a review. Good job, Adam. You did so great.
You'll bring me back?
Yeah, I'll bring you back. All right. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us in today's episode. If you liked the content and want to hear more, remember to hit that subscribe button and write a review. As a small business owner, I appreciate it more than you know. If you are looking for a program to help with self-confidence, to lose weight, get in shape, and work on your mental, physical, and emotional health, check out my training programs on www.bodybybree.com. My team and I help to hold you accountable through the Body by Bree app, where you log in to see all your workouts, custom meal plan made specifically for you and your needs, and communication through the messenger. You are never alone when you're on the Body by Bree training program. Click the link in the show notes to get more information on how to transform your life from the inside out.